Have you ever felt it? Not as a distinct thought, but as a low, persistent hum beneath the noise of your daily life. A quiet, unshakable suspicion that it's all a bit of a joke. A sense that the frantic striving, the relentless pursuit of goals, the carefully constructed identities, and the grand dramas of human existence are ultimately being played out on an empty stage for an audience that isn't there. It is the feeling of scrolling through an infinite feed of curated joy and manufactured outrage, only to close the app and feel nothing but a dull, hollow ache. It is the exhaustion that comes from being told you can be anything, only to feel paralyzed by the sheer meaninglessness of every available choice. It is the cynical smirk that serves as a shield against the terror of genuine belief. This pervasive atmosphere, this spiritual anesthetic that numbs both the peaks of joy and the valleys of despair, is the signature feeling of our age. It is nihilism. Not necessarily the bomb-throwing, revolutionary nihilism of 19th century Russian novels, but a far more insidious and widespread variant. It is a quiet, passive, and deeply internalized nihilism, a condition of the soul that has seeped into the very foundations of modern society. It is the logical conclusion of our greatest triumphs and the source of our most profound anxieties. Nihilism, in its essence, is the conviction that life is without objective meaning, purpose, or intrinsic value. It is the rejection of the belief in a higher power, a universal moral law, or an ultimate truth. But to define it so clinically is to miss its felt reality. For most, nihilism is not an active philosophical choice. It is a slow, creeping erosion. It is the gradual realization that the gods you were told to believe in are silent, the values you were told to uphold are arbitrary, and the success you were told to chase is unsatisfying. It is the slow, dawning horror that there is no grand script, no divine author, and no ultimate point to the play. Why now? Why has this feeling, once confined to the feverish writings of tormented philosophers, become the default setting for so many in the 21st century? The answer is not simple. Nihilism is not the result of a single cause, but the emergent property of our entire modern world. It is the ghost haunting the machine of progress. To understand its ascendancy, we must perform an autopsy on the corpse of our old certainties and examine the paradoxical poisons that have been administered by our most trusted healers: God, reason, prosperity, and freedom. Part 1: The Death of God and the Great Unmooring. The story of modern nihilism begins, as it must, with a funeral. It was the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche who, in the late 19th century, famously acted as the coroner for the divine. His declaration of "God is dead" was not a triumphant cry of atheistic victory. It was a panicked, terrified warning. Nietzsche understood that for millennia, the idea of God had served as the ultimate anchor for the Western world. It was the sun around which the entire solar system of meaning, morality, purpose, and value revolved. God was the ultimate guarantor. He guaranteed that your life had a purpose, that your suffering was not in vain, that justice would ultimately prevail, and that there was a universal, unchanging moral law written into the fabric of the cosmos. The death of God, then, was not merely the removal of a single belief. It was a cataclysmic cosmological event. It was the unmooring of humanity from its existential certainties. Nietzsche's madman screamed in the marketplace, "Where is God? I will tell you, we have killed him, you and I. All of us are his murderers. What were we doing when we unchained this earth from its sun? Whither is it moving now? Whither are we moving? Away from all suns? Are we not plunging continually, backward, sideward, forward, in all directions? Is there still any up or down? Are we not straying as through an infinite nothing?" For the first few generations, it was perhaps possible to ignore the full implications of this event. Society could coast on the fumes of Christian morality, retaining the ethics of compassion, justice, and human dignity, while discarding the divine source. But fumes eventually dissipate. You are living in the world after the fumes have cleared. The great unmooring is now your lived reality. You see it in the profound difficulty your society has in agreeing on any fundamental moral truth. Debates about ethics are no longer about interpreting a shared sacred text, but about the clash of purely subjective wills. Without a transcendent source for morality, right and wrong become matters of opinion, power, or cultural consensus, all of which are terrifyingly fluid. This loss extends beyond morality. It is a loss of cosmic narrative, the story that gave your ancestors a place in the universe, a story of creation, fall, redemption, and ultimate salvation, has been replaced by a story of cosmic accidents, genetic mutations, and the cold, indifferent expansion of space-time. The rituals that mark the passage of life, baptism, marriage, funerals, have for many lost their sacred resonance, becoming either hollow traditions or purely secular celebrations. You are born by chance, you live by your own wits, and you die into oblivion. This is the new baseline, the default narrative of a disenchanted world. The great comforting canopy of heaven has been torn away, leaving you shivering under the cold, silent gaze of an infinite, empty cosmos. This is the foundational wound from which modern nihilism bleeds. Part 2. The cold comfort of reason, the paradox of the scientific worldview. Into the vacuum left by God, a new deity ascended, reason. Science became the new arbiter of truth, promising to lead humanity out of the darkness of superstition and into the light of empirical certainty. And in so many ways, it has delivered spectacularly. It has cured diseases, split the atom, mapped the human genome, and sent probes to the farthest reaches of our solar system. It has given you a world of technological marvels and unprecedented understanding of the material world. But in its very triumph, science has inadvertently deepened the nihilistic void. The scientific method, by its very nature, is a process of disenchantment. It takes a world that was once filled with spirits, purpose, and divine intention, and reduces it to a system of physical laws, chemical reactions, and mathematical probabilities. A rainbow is no longer a covenant from God. It is the refraction of light through water droplets. Love is no longer a sacred mystery. It is a cocktail of oxytocin, dopamine, and vasopressin designed to ensure pair bonding and the propagation of the species. Your consciousness, the very seat of your self, is explained as an emergent property of complex neural networks firing in your brain. Science is brilliant at answering the question, how? It can tell you how the universe began with a big bang, how life evolved through natural selection, and how your brain processes information. But it is constitutionally silent on the question, why? It can describe the intricate mechanics of existence with breathtaking precision, but it cannot and does not prescribe any meaning to it. The universe it reveals is one of magnificent, awe-inspiring pointlessness. The very faculty that you were taught to trust above all others, your rational, analytical intellect, when turned upon the great questions of life, finds no evidence for purpose, no mandate for morality, and no inherent meaning whatsoever. This has created a devastating internal conflict. Your rational mind tells you that you are a collection of atoms, a moist robot, a clever animal whose primary biological imperatives are to survive and reproduce. Yet your soul, your deep irrational self, still yearns for meaning, for purpose, for a sense of significance beyond mere biological function. The harder you apply your reason, the more you deconstruct your own values. You ask, why should I be good? Reason can only answer in terms of game theory, social contracts, or evolutionary benefits, all of which are cold, pragmatic, and ultimately uninspiring. It cannot tell you that you should be good, because goodness is an objective, cosmic truth. It cannot tell you that love is more than a chemical reaction. And so, you are left with a mind that has become an expert in dissolving its own foundations, a tool of analysis so powerful that it leaves nothing sacred in its wake. The world becomes a collection of facts, not a vessel of meaning, and in a world of mere facts, nihilism finds fertile ground. The gospel of the market, consumerism as a failed religion, with the traditional and rational sources of meaning in crisis, a third and far more seductive power rushed in to fill the void: the free market. Capitalism, in its late globalized form, is not merely an economic system, it is a meaning-making system, it is a new religion, and its gospel is consumerism. The promise of this new religion is simple and intoxicating. Fulfillment can be purchased. The existential emptiness that haunts you, the ache of meaninglessness, can be soothed, one transaction at a time. Your identity is no longer something to be discovered through introspection or granted by God. It is something to be constructed, curated, and displayed through the brands you wear, the products you buy, and the experiences you consume. The market offers a dizzying array of ready-made identities. You can be the rugged adventurer, buy the SUV, the sophisticated intellectual, buy the artisanal coffee, the mindful wellness guru, buy the yoga pants and the subscription to the meditation app. The rituals of this religion are performed daily in shopping malls and on e-commerce websites. Advertising acts as its liturgy, presenting you with images of a secular heaven, a world of perfect bodies, beautiful homes, and effortless happiness, all accessible through the sacrament of purchase. It cleverly co-opts the language of the soul. Cars promise freedom, soft drinks promise connection, and smartphones promise community. The system works by first creating a sense of lack, an anxiety that you are not thin enough, rich enough, cool enough, or happy enough, and then offering its products as the solution. But this religion is built on a lie, and you are beginning to feel it in your bones. The fulfillment it promises is intentionally fleeting. This is the logic of the hedonic treadmill. The thrill of a new purchase provides a temporary spike of dopamine, a momentary feeling of wholeness, but it quickly fades. The new car becomes just a car. The new phone becomes obsolete. The baseline of dissatisfaction inevitably returns, requiring a new, bigger, better purchase to achieve the same fleeting high. This endless cycle of manufactured desire and planned obsolescence does not lead to contentment. It leads to exhaustion, debt, and a profound sense of emptiness. You are beginning to realize that you are trapped in a system that needs you to be perpetually unhappy in order to function. The more you participate, the more you feel like a cog in a vast, impersonal machine whose only purpose is its own perpetuation. The promise that you are what you own ultimately reveals itself to be a cruel joke. You are not your possessions. And when you look at the mountain of things you have accumulated and still feel the same quiet ache of meaninglessness, the nihilistic suspicion that it's all a scam becomes almost impossible to ignore. Consumerism promised to be a cure for the void, but it has become one of its most powerful engines, a glittering distraction that ultimately leaves the soul more starved than before. Part 4. The Digital Abyss, Information Overload, and the Fractured Self. The final and perhaps most potent accelerant of modern nihilism is the digital world you now inhabit. The internet and social media have fundamentally rewired not only your society, but your very consciousness, creating a perfect storm for epistemological, moral, and existential chaos. First, you are drowning in information. Your ancestors lived in a world of information scarcity. Truth was handed down from a few trusted sources: the priest, the king, the village elder. You live in a world of absolute information saturation. For every fact, there is a counterfact. For every expert opinion, there is a YouTube video refuting it. Every established truth, from the shape of the earth to the efficacy of vaccines, is subject to a relentless, context-free deconstruction online. This has led to a crisis of truth itself. When you are bombarded with 1 billion competing narratives, the cognitive effort required to form a coherent worldview becomes overwhelming. It is easier to retreat into a cynical detachment, to adopt the ironic posture that everything is fake and nothing is true. This is epistemological nihilism, not as a philosophical stance, but as a psychological coping mechanism. Second, you are forced into the relentless performance of a self. Social media is not a window into other people's lives. It is a highlight reel of their curated personas. You are incentivized to create your own digital avatar, a carefully edited and filtered version of yourself that is happier, more successful, and more attractive than the real, messy, and insecure person who exists offline. This creates a profound and painful gap between your performed self and your authentic self. You live with the constant low-grade anxiety of maintaining this facade, and the constant corrosive envy of comparing your behind-the-scenes reality with everyone else's public performance. This fosters a deep sense of alienation and inauthenticity. If the self you present to the world is a fiction, it becomes easy to feel that your true self is worthless, or worse, that it doesn't even exist. Third, the very structure of the digital world flattens meaning. On your social media feed, a photo of a friend's wedding sits next to a meme about a cat, which sits next to news of a distant war, which sits next to an ad for sneakers. Everything is reduced to content, a fleeting stimulus to be consumed and immediately forgotten. The profound and the profane, the sacred and the silly are all presented with equal weight, stripped of context and gravity. This constant exposure to decontextualized information erodes your capacity for deep, focused attention and emotional resonance. It becomes harder to feel that anything truly matters when everything is presented as equally disposable. The world is no longer a story to be understood, but an infinite scroll to be consumed, a stream of digital ephemera that leaves no lasting mark. Part 5. The burden of absolute freedom and the path forward. This leads to the final, cruel paradox. The collapse of the old gods, the silence of science, the lies of the market, and the chaos of the internet have all conspired to leave you in a state of unprecedented freedom. You are, in theory, absolutely free to choose your own values, construct your own identity, and create your own meaning. There is no divine command, no social tradition, no binding community to tell you who to be or how to live. This is the promise of modern individualism. But what if this absolute freedom is not a gift, but a terrifying burden? The existentialist philosophers understood this as the dizziness of freedom. When you can be anything, the choice of what to be becomes overwhelming. The responsibility to create an entire universe of meaning ex nihilo, out of nothing, is a crushing weight. This can lead to a state of paralysis, a feeling that no choice is any more or less meaningful than any other. Why commit to a single career, a single relationship, a single worldview, when a million other options are always available, always beckoning from the screen in your pocket? This paralysis is a form of existential nihilism. It is the feeling that since no path is objectively the right one, all paths are equally meaningless. It is easier to refuse to choose, to drift through life on a current of irony and distraction, to keep your options open until you die. So, where does this leave you? You stand in the ruins of the old world, with the silent cosmos above you, the hollow promises of the market around you, and the chaotic abyss of the internet in your hand. The diagnosis is grim. Nihilism is not a fringe philosophy. It is the logical endpoint of the modern condition. But the diagnosis is not the prognosis. The recognition of the void is not the end of the journey, it is the necessary beginning. The great existentialists like Albert Camus saw this clearly. For Camus, the moment you truly confront the absurdity of a meaningless universe is the moment you become truly free. It is the moment you can begin the act of rebellion. This is not a political rebellion, but a metaphysical one. It is the rebellion of Sisyphus, who is condemned to push a rock up a hill for eternity, only to watch it roll back down. He knows his task is pointless. He has no illusions. And yet, Camus concludes, one must imagine Sisyphus happy. His happiness comes from his conscious, defiant embrace of his fate. He finds meaning not in the task itself, but in his struggle against the pointlessness of the task. This is the challenge presented to you. The nihilistic atmosphere of our time is not a command to despair. It is an invitation to create. It is an invitation to build meaning on the firm foundation of meaninglessness itself. This meaning will not be universal, eternal, or divinely sanctioned. It will be fragile, personal, and forged in the fire of your own conscious choice. It is found in the courageous act of loving another person in a universe that does not care. It is found in the creation of art in a world that will eventually turn to dust. It is found in the pursuit of justice and compassion in a society that seems to reward selfishness. The path out of nihilism is not to find a new god, a new system, or a new product that will give you the meaning you crave. The path is to accept the terrifying freedom you have been given and to take responsibility for creating meaning yourself, moment by moment, through your actions, your commitments, and your love. It is to stare directly into the infinite nothingness and with full knowledge of the void, choose to build a small, warm, and well-lit fire. It is the hardest work there is. But in a world that has been unchained from its sun, it is the only work that truly matters.